Um, like I said, I know many friends, including my ex-in-laws and different people that I've known during my life, fervently believe that they are going to go to a place of waiting for a resurrection, and it's either a paradise or a spirit prison for those who are not accepting of their religion. So they're not going to see me. They're not going to see me in that state, because until they realize they're creating that experience, I apologize for that outside. I'm going to shut the window, okay? Until they realize they are creating that experience, those souls that also believe the same thing that they do, like energies are brought together. Like energies that do attract. They don't repel like opposites. They are attracted together. So these souls are going to be attracted to the same reality in that life. And undoubtedly they're going to be doing the things that they believe they would do, until they realize that this is a reflection of their beliefs. And that's going to be the same with all religions, all beliefs. That's why I told you initially to be careful what you hold in your mind during this life. Be consciously aware of your beliefs, because those beliefs are going to be manifest to you slower in this life and quickly there. Okay, I need to collect my thoughts. This is what this has to do with scrying, because there are many souls, many people who, when they die, they may not go into those higher realms initially. Nobody is going to force you to go there. Now, you are going to probably see a light of some type when you die. And this is verified with near-death experiences, and this is verified in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and many, many mystic sources say this, and it's not a coincidence. From all over the world, they see a light. Either that light is through a tunnel. In the Eastern religions, they see a bridge, because that's more of their culture. It depends on your beliefs during your life that you've held. But that light is a higher vibration, of a higher level of consciousness. And people will say they feel drawn toward it. And as you allow yourself to go into that light, you are going to experience the higher aspects of who you are. You are going to return to a state of knowing who you are beyond this life. And that's where you want to go. Now, there are many souls, though, that have a difficult time doing this. And we call those souls earthbound. And this is not a permanent state for them. But for whatever reason, they do not want to go there. Maybe a reason is because during their life they believed in a hell and they think they're going there. Maybe they were very negative personages in this life and they are afraid to go there. Another reason why is because maybe in this life they enjoyed who they were in this life. Their ego, their false self, the self that we think of as who we are in this life. They enjoyed it to the point where they still want to hold on to it. And so they do not want to leave this realm, even though they fully cannot interact with it. They want to stay here because they don't want to let go of that persona, let go of their ego and go back into a higher state. They like this. And there are other souls that stay here because for some reason or another, they do not know they're dead. And I know that sounds bizarre. It did to me, because I thought, as growing up and stuff, I assumed that when I died, I would instantly see my body on the ground, which a lot of people do, and realize that I am no longer physically alive, and then I'll desire to move on. And that happens, majority of cases. But there are a lot of people that don't believe in anything after death. And because of that, they don't even see their body when they die. Their physical body, they don't even see it. It could be lying there, all mangled, and they will not see it because they don't want to see it. You see what you believe, you see what you want to see. And they may become very frustrated because in that state they're still aware of everybody, everything. They're confused. Now, time passes for them differently than it does in the physical realm. They could stay in that state for what for us would be hundreds of years. To them, it may not be that long, because they're vibrating at a higher state, but unaware of what's going on around them. Very frustrated that people will not communicate with them, become angry because of this, become just very upset eventually, or maybe they might not. Maybe they'll decide to go back to a place that they are comfortable with because they feel safe and hang out there. And till either they come to the realization of that, the fact they're dead, and want to move on, or until somebody either in the physical realm or somebody in a higher realm comes down to them, like a guide, and explains it to them eventually, and helps them through that transition. That's not going to be necessary for you, because you are going to understand the transition before it happens to you. And that's a very good thing. That's a blessing in your life. And so, anyhow, I want to tell you an anecdote. I have several, but I'm going to tell you just one, I think, of an experience I had with a disembodied entity that was in this house where I live right now. We have several disembodied entities that live in our house. And some of them come and go. Some of them have crossed over and still enjoy this place where they lived for 70 years, 80 years. There are people that live in this house that I live in. We call our home Plum Gables. It's a beautiful Victorian home here in Maine. And there was a family that lived in our home. They were a wonderful family. They had 5 children. They owned a store right here in the village. They were here since the early 1900s. The home was built in 1894, but they moved in the early 1900s. And some of them were born in this house, grew up, owned this house, and raised their own children here, and lived here until they died. And the house was very important to them. It was a part of their life. And these entities, I know they have crossed over, but they still enjoy coming back and seeing the house and feeling this connection, and they come and go. But there was a sweet lady who lived here for about 10 or 15 years during the 1980s, and I believe actually it was during the 90s and the early part of 2001. And her name was Norlene. And she's a very sweet person, I know, because I've encountered her. What happened was my mother told me about Norlene when I first moved here. She said, my mother saw her. Norlene lived here. She was older. She died in her sleep. And she died. This was her room. And she also had the adjacent room. This was her area. She lived in the mother-in-law suite. And she passed away in her sleep. And at the time, I don't believe anybody was here in the house. The other owners of the house would go down to Florida. They lived here, so she was basically by herself in this home. And she passed away in her sleep. Now, my mother saw her when she first moved in. Norlene had a baggy gray sweater, a wool sweater. She's rather short, rather frail. She has short gray hair that comes about to her ears, goes down behind her neck. It's straight. It's about as long as my hair. And she was very timid. The neighbors who knew her said they would come over, and she's a very timid lady. She used to fiddle with her buttons on her sweater, and she was very timid, very sweet. And my mother saw her peeking around the corner near the fireplace when my parents first moved here. I think she was curious about what's going on, and she was aware of my parents. And she was peeking around in a very a benign way, and my mother saw her crystal clear. And my parents, my family, were not startled when we see things like this, because this is part of who we are. We have experienced this a lot. So this isn't like on Most Haunted or a haunting on those TV shows where people are terrified. We understand a little more than the average person, so this doesn't terrify us. It actually is intriguing to us sometimes. Well, anyhow, when I came here, and I am now living in the mother-in-law suite of this home, helping my parents, we're going to turn this into a bed and breakfast shortly. I was sleeping in the room one night, and I think that I had been astral projecting in some way, because I was outside. I know it sounds bizarre, but I was outside of my body.